Before we start multiplying complex numbers, I need to make a note about I. And more specifically, it's I squared, or what happens when I is multiplied by itself. So I want to start this off by saying, remember that I is radical negative 1. So if we square I, that means it's radical negative 1 squared. And then the square root and the square cancel, and we're just left with negative 1. Now, that's powerful because we have an imaginary number squared, and it turns into a real number. And this is good because in certain processes, we're going to turn i's into I squareds, or start with i's and end up with I squareds, and we can then revert those into negative 1s, which are real, and that's good. So the big thing to remember, and you need to train your mind to be alert for, is anytime you see an I squared, you want to turn that into a negative 1, because that's what it is. The imaginary turns into the real. Okay, so let's see this in action. If we multiply two complex numbers, such as negative 8 minus 6i and 2 plus 2i, since we're multiplying, this is where the I squareds are going to come into play. But here, we multiply just like normal binomials. That'd be negative 16, not 18. So negative 16, and then minus 16i, minus 12i, and then minus 12i squared. All right, right there. Bam, there's that I squared. So on my next step, I'm not going to write I squared. I'm going to rewrite that as a negative 1. So this next step is going to be a negative 16. Those can be combined to negative 28i. And then here we have negative 12 times I squared, which is times negative 1. And I squared turns into the negative 1. Okay, we're almost finished. And we're not done yet because we now have a real number and another real number, and those can be combined. So the negative 12 times negative 1 is actually a positive 12. And so now we can combine these two to give us a negative 4. And then we can bring down the negative 28i. So this would be the new complex number that is formed from multiplying those two together. So it's just like normal binomial multiplication, but you're going to have an I squared that needs to be converted and then recombined with the other real number. All right, let's look at one more example. So here we're going to have a negative 8 plus 6i squared. So same deal. Remember that squaring or exponents cannot distribute onto addition. So you need to rewrite this as negative 8 plus 6i times negative 8 plus 6i. All right, no distributing, none of this. It's very bad, very bad. Okay, and now we'll do our multiplying. That'll give us a 64 minus 48i, and then another minus 48i, and a plus 36i squared. All right, there's an I squared. Immediate reaction. Let's turn that into that negative 1. All right, so I'm going to put that actually right away. 36 times negative 1. No more I squared. Okay? And so that simplifies to that. Last but not least, we now have this new real number, negative 36, and we can combine that with the 64. And so that will give us, what is that, 28. So we have 28 minus 96i as our new complex number. Okay, why don't you pause and try this one real quick. So just multiply a negative 7 plus I times negative 3 plus 4i. All right, this should give you a 17 minus 31i.